The Academy's library was almost empty during the night cycle. Most students needed sleep or meditation to rest their minds. The Veltari powered down like living computers. The Omnari settled into their gas chambers to process the day's chemical information. The Kef disconnected from their hive mind to let their shared consciousness rest. But humans were different. On Earth, danger never slept. Neither did they. The 5 human cadets sat around a table covered with data tablets, star charts, and half-empty coffee cups. The bitter drink was one of the few Earth items the Academy allowed, mostly because no other species could understand why humans would voluntarily consume something so harsh. Dea-Un spread out psychological profiles of both fleet commanders across the table. Her perfect memory let her recall every detail from thousands of military records. Admiral Kexthul of the Vorthan Empire, she said, pointing to the first file. 63 years old. Won 47 battles without a single retreat. His people believe that running away from a fight brings shame to 7 generations of family. She moved to the second file. Commander Isandra of the Rillan Federation, 92 years old, which is young for her species. She has never lost more than 10% of her fleet in any battle. Her people think individual glory means nothing if the group does not survive. Teho rubbed his tired eyes. So one commander would rather die than look weak, and the other would rather wait forever than take big risks. Exactly, Daun said. They are fighting the war their cultures taught them to fight. But what if someone changed the rules completely? Junho looked up from a technical manual about the Nexus Gate. His tablet showed complex diagrams that would take most aliens years to understand. I found something interesting about the space station. He projected a holographic blueprint above the table. The Nexus Gate appeared as a maze of corridors, docking bays, and power systems built around a strange central core. See this? He pointed to the center of the station. The whole structure is built around something else, something that was already there. Minwu leaned closer to study the image. What is it? The original construction records call it a precursor artifact. The builders found it floating in space and constructed the gate around it. Nobody knows what it does. So Young looked up from her own research. She had been studying the battle formations both fleets used. That explains something I noticed. Look at how both sides position their ships. She activated another hologram, showing the space around the Nexus Gate. Red dots for Vorthan ships and blue dots for Rillan ships formed 2 perfect spheres on opposite sides of the station. They maintain exactly the same distance from the gate, she continued. Always. Even when tactical advantage would come from moving closer or farther away. Why? Teho asked. Because their sensors cannot get accurate readings if they move too close to the station's core. Something interferes with their equipment. So they stay in safe positions where their technology works properly. Dayun connected the pieces. They have been fighting for 10 years, but they are not really fighting over the gate itself. They are fighting over the space around it. Neither side has actually studied what they are trying to control. The humans looked at each other. In their minds, they could almost hear what their alien classmates would say. Impossible. Advanced civilizations do not make such basic mistakes. But humans came from a world where basic mistakes killed you quickly. They learned to check their assumptions. Minwu pulled up communication records from both fleets. His talent for languages let him understand not just the words, but the emotions behind them. Listen to this, he said, playing an intercepted message. A Vorthan officer's voice filled the room, speaking in the harsh, growling language of his people. Minwu translated, Supply Officer Grackmore reporting. Food stores running low. Morale dropping. Soldiers asking why we fight over empty space when families need us at home. He played another message, this one from the Rillan fleet. The snake-like. Alien's words hissed with exhaustion. Medical Officer Sisandra reporting. Stress injuries increasing. Crew requesting rotation back to home worlds. Many questioning the purpose of this endless conflict. Both sides are tired, Minwu said. The real soldiers do not want to fight anymore. Only the commanders keep the war going. Teho stood up and walked to the library's main window. Outside, He could see the distant flicker of weapon fire as advanced scouts from both fleets tested each other's defenses. Tomorrow, that small light would become a blaze that would be visible from other star systems. On Earth, he said quietly, when two groups fight over something for a long time, sometimes they forget why they started fighting. They just keep fighting because that is what they have always done. So how did humans solve those kinds of fights? So Young asked. Tejo smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Usually something bigger came along that threatened both groups. Then they had to choose between fighting each other or working together to survive. But there is nothing bigger than these two fleets, Dawen said. Maybe there does not need to be, Junho said slowly. He was staring at the precursor artifact in his hologram. What if the threat is not something new, but something they have been ignoring? He manipulated the image, zooming in on the mysterious object at the station's core. This artifact has been sitting here for 50,000 years. Every battle fought near the gate happens within range of this thing. What if it has been watching, learning? The other humans became very quiet. Outside their window, the stars seemed to grow brighter. The precursors disappeared long before any current civilization reached the stars, Minwu said. But they left technology behind, technology we still do not understand. What if we are not supposed to control it? So Young asked. What if we are supposed to learn from it? Dawen pulled up historical records of precursor sites. Every precursor ruin discovered has been the same. Empty buildings, strange devices, and no clues about what happened to the builders. But also no weapons, no defenses, no signs of war. Maybe they found a better way, Tejo said. The humans worked through the night while the rest of the academy slept. They did not try to design new battle strategies or create better weapons. Instead, they asked different questions. What if the war was not about military victory? What if the Nexus Gate was not meant to be controlled by one side? What if the precursor artifact was not decoration, but communication? As the Academy's artificial dawn began, they had their answer. It was not the answer their instructors expected. It was not the answer any advanced civilization would consider. It was a human answer. We do not need to help one side win, Tejo said, looking at his friends around the table covered with empty coffee cups and scattered data. We need to help both sides remember what they were really fighting for. And how do we do that? Da-un asked. Junho smiled and held up a small device he had been building during the night. It looked like a simple scanner, but humans had learned to make simple tools do complex jobs. We talked to the artifact, he said, and we let it talk to them. The plan they had created would require them to leave the academy without permission. It would require them to sneak through a war zone where both sides would try to kill them. It would require them to activate alien technology that had been silent for 50,000 years. Their alien classmates would call it impossible. Their instructors would call it insane. Their families back on Earth would call it exactly the kind of thing humans always did when faced with problems that seemed too big to solve. Outside the library window, the first explosions of the final battle began to light up the darkness between stars. The humans gathered their equipment and prepared to do something that would either end the war or get them all killed. On a death world, those were often the same thing. The morning presentation hall was full of excited alien students. Each group had worked all night on their solutions to end the 10-year war. The Veltari had created a complex musical display showing resource management strategies. The Omnari had filled their section with colorful chemical clouds that spelled out detailed battle plans. The Kef moved in perfect coordination, their shared mind presenting a unified tactical analysis. Commander Velthari Zix stood at the front, her crystal body reflecting the light from dozens of holographic displays. Present your solutions, she announced. The Veltari went first. Their leader, Silthara, chimed in harmonious tones as she explained their plan. We propose a 47-phase campaign spanning 18 months. Phase 1 involves disrupting enemy supply lines through economic sanctions. Tejo stopped listening after the first few minutes. 47 phases. 18 months. The Veltari wanted to turn a war into a longer war. The Omnari presented. Next. Their chemical clouds formed complex molecular diagrams as they described psychological warfare tactics. We will deploy fear-inducing pheromones to both fleets, causing gradual retreat behavior over a period of 8 to 12 months. More months. More delays. The humans exchanged glances. The KEF spoke with one voice through their chosen representative. Our analysis shows optimal victory through coordinated multi-vector assault. We have identified 847 potential weak points in enemy formations. Sequential exploitation of these vulnerabilities will ensure victory in 6 months with acceptable losses of 30%. 6 months, 30% losses. Millions of lives treated like numbers in a calculation, and the humans? Commander Zix asked, turning her crystal eyes toward the back corner where the 5 Earth students sat. Tejo stood up slowly. Around the room, alien students leaned forward, ready to hear another primitive human idea they could laugh at. Need more time to finalize our approach, he said calmly. May we present tomorrow morning? The room erupted in alien sounds of amusement. The Veltari chimed like breaking glass. The Omnari clouds turned bright orange with laughter. The KEF all smiled identical smiles. The Deathworlders admit defeat before trying, whispered Silthera loudly enough for everyone to hear. Commander Zix studied the humans with her multi-spectrum vision. Very well. You have until tomorrow. Do not waste this opportunity. As the other students filed out, chattering about their brilliant strategies, the humans remained seated. They waited until the hall was empty except for the soft hum of life support systems. Phase 1, Daun said quietly. Confirmed, Minwoo replied, checking his portable communication device. While their classmates had been preparing presentations, the humans had been preparing something else entirely. They left the presentation hall and walked casually toward the Academy's docking bay. To any observer, they looked like students heading to a routine training exercise. Minwoo had filed the proper paperwork. So-young had reserved a small transport ship. Everything appeared normal. The transport was a simple vessel designed for short-range training flights. Most alien students needed larger ships with complex life support systems, advanced navigation computers, and automated safety protocols. Humans, coming from a world where everything tried to kill them, had learned to make do with less. So-young slipped into the pilot's seat like she was born there. Her hands moved across the controls before her conscious mind had time to think. On Earth, slow reflexes meant death. In space, they meant the same thing. Academy Control, this is Training Flight 77 requesting departure clearance, she said into her headset. Clearance granted. 77. Maintain safe distance from combat zone. Academy is not responsible for student casualties in active war zones. Understood, Control. The transport lifted off smoothly and headed toward open space. Behind them, the Academy grew smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Now the real work begins, Tejo said. The journey to the Nexus Gate normally took 6 hours through safe navigation routes, but safe routes were for ships that could not handle danger. So-young had studied the current battle maps and found something interesting. Both fleets had created a corridor of destroyed ships and debris between their positions. Most pilots would see this as an obstacle to avoid. So-young saw it as camouflage. She dropped the transport into the debris field and began threading between broken hull plates and twisted metal. Her reflexes, trained by a lifetime on a death world, let her navigate spaces that would require artificial intelligence assistance for other species. Contact on sensors, Junho reported from his station. Vorthon patrol, bearing 27 Mark IV. I see them, So-young said. She rolled the transport behind the wreckage of a massive cargo hauler, just as the enemy sensors swept past their position. For 2 hours, they played hide-and-seek among the ruins of 10 years of warfare. Every piece of debris told a story. Merchant, ships caught in crossfire. Military vessels that had fought their last battles. Escape pods that had never reached safety. This is what happens when advanced civilizations cannot find better solutions, Daun said quietly, looking at the wreckage through the viewport. This is what we are here to stop, Tejo replied. The Nexus Gate grew larger ahead of them. The space station was enormous. Bigger than most cities, its metal surface was scarred by weapons fire, but the basic structure remained intact. Both sides needed the gate functional, so they fought around it rather than destroying it. "How do we get inside?" Minwoo asked. Junho smiled and held up a datapad. "I studied the station's maintenance schedules. Shift change happens every 8 hours, the next one is in 20 minutes. And during shift change, automated systems take over station security for exactly 17 minutes. Long enough for old crews to leave and new crews to arrive, but not long enough for anyone to notice extra people coming aboard." So Young brought the transport close to one of the station's smaller docking ports. "Maintenance contractors dock here," she said. "If we time this right, we will look like workers reporting for duty." They waited in silence as the minutes passed. Around them, space flickered with distant weapon fire as both fleets continued their careful dance of war. Neither side wanted to get too close to the gate until they were ready for the final battle. "Shift change in 60 seconds, Junho announced. They put on maintenance coveralls that Minwoo had obtained through methods he did not explain. The uniforms were standard issue for dozens of different species, designed to fit anyone who might work on the station. 30 seconds. So Young moved the transport toward the docking port. Her timing had to be perfect. Too early, and station security would question them. Too late, and the next shift would notice unauthorized personnel. 10 seconds. The transport touched the docking port exactly as the old maintenance crew was leaving through another exit. Minwoo stepped forward with forged work orders written in perfect galactic standard. "Routine inspection of core systems," he told the automated security scanner in a bored voice. "Authorization code 77 Alpha 9. The scanner beeped once and opened the airlock. They were inside. The Nexus Gate's corridors were wide enough for multiple species to pass each other comfortably. Emergency lighting cast long shadows on metal walls covered with warning signs in 17 different languages. The station hummed with the sound of massive generators and life support systems. "The core is this way," Junho said, consulting his downloaded schematics. They walked through the station like they belonged there. When other workers passed them in the corridors, Minwoo nodded politely and continued walking. Confidence was the best camouflage. The deeper they went into the station, the fewer people they met. The core sections were automated, requiring minimal maintenance. Only the most essential systems were located near the mysterious precursor artifact that formed the station's heart. Finally, they reached a heavy door marked with warnings in dozens of languages. "Authorized personnel only. Danger, unknown radiation. Precursor technology, approach with caution." Junho connected his portable scanner to the door's electronic lock. "Simple encryption," he said. "These aliens make everything too complicated." The door opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay a chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. The room was perfectly spherical, with walkways extending from the entrance to a platform at the center. And there, floating in a web of energy fields and support beams, was the precursor artifact. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The object looked like a crystal flower made of light, constantly shifting between colors that had no names. It was the size of a small building, but somehow seemed both larger and smaller than that. Looking at it made their eyes water and their heads hurt. 50,000 years, Daun whispered. "It has been waiting here for 50,000 years. Around the artifact, monitoring equipment blinked and hummed. Generations of scientists had studied the object without understanding its purpose. To them, it was a puzzle to be solved through careful analysis and theoretical modeling. But humans approached ancient technology differently. June. The precursor artifact pulsed with light that seemed to come from inside reality itself. The 5 humans stood on the platform, watching colors that their eyes were not designed to see. The crystal flower shape grew brighter with each heartbeat-like pulse. "Is it supposed to do that?" So Young asked, taking a step back. Junho watched his scanner's readings jump wildly across the screen. "I think it is trying to communicate with us." Around them, the monitoring equipment that had been silent for 50,000 years began to beep and flash. Lights that had never worked suddenly came alive. Ancient displays flickered with symbols that looked almost familiar but not quite. "The energy readings are off the scale," Dawn said, reading over Junho's shoulder. It is drawing power from the station's main reactor, but also from something else. What something else? Taeho asked. Minwoo was studying a nearby console that had started displaying text in languages he had never seen before. I think it is drawing power from the battle outside. Every time the fleets fire their weapons, the artifact gets stronger, If to prove his point, the artifact pulsed brighter as the sound of distant explosions reached them through the station's hull. Both fleets had begun their final approach to the Nexus Gate. The war that had lasted 10 years was about to reach its climax. We need to work faster, Taeho said. Junho connected more cables between his scanner and the ancient control systems. On Earth, humans had learned to make different technologies work together, even when they were not designed to be compatible. I am getting something, he said. It is like the artifact is trying to download information into my scanner. What kind of information? Dawoon asked. Star charts. Lots of them. But these show places that are not on any current galactic maps. The artifact's light grew steadier, less like a heartbeat and more like breathing. The strange symbols on the ancient displays began to make sense, as if the artifact was teaching them how to read its language in real time. Look at this, Minwoo said, pointing to his console. The artifact has been recording everything that happens near the gate. Every battle, every communication, every death. It has been learning about our civilizations for 10 years. So young. Studied the patterns of light flowing through the artifact. It is not just learning about the war. It is learning about us, about how we think, how we communicate, how we solve problems. Or fail to solve them, Dawoon added quietly. The station shook as weapons fire from both fleets came closer. Through the chamber's small viewing ports, they could see the distant lights of thousands of ships moving into battle formation. Admiral Kekthul's Vorthan forces spread out like a red carpet of destruction. Commander Issandra's Rillan fleet formed precise blue geometric patterns. They are really going to do it, Taeho said. They are going to destroy each other over something they do not understand. Junho's scanner beeped loudly. I think the artifact is ready. Ready for what? To show them what they are really fighting over. The artifact's light suddenly focused into a tight beam that shot upward through the station's core. Emergency alarms began to sound throughout the Nexus Gate as every system on the station activated at once. What did you do? So Young asked. I think we just turned on the galaxy's oldest communication system, Junho replied. Outside the station, both fleet commanders noticed the change immediately. The Nexus Gate, which had been dark except for basic running lights, was now glowing like a star. Energy readings that had been stable for 50,000 years were spiking beyond measurement. Admiral, reported a Vorthan officer to Kekthul, the gate is doing something we have never seen before. Impossible, the rock-like commander growled. That station has been dead since before our species reached the stars. On the Rillan flagship, Commander Isandra was receiving similar reports. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases, her science officer hissed. Whatever is happening was not triggered by either fleet. Then who triggered it? She asked. Before anyone could answer, both fleets received the same message simultaneously. It appeared on every screen, in every ship, in perfect Vorthan and perfect Rillan language. Why do you fight for the right to control a bridge when you could build a road instead? The message came with something else, a flood of information that made both commanders forget about their planned battle. Star charts appeared showing dozens of natural wormholes throughout the galaxy. Most of them were stable and required no artificial gates to use. The galaxy was not divided by distance. It was connected by pathways that had always existed. But the real shock came next. The artifact began projecting holographic recordings of the past 10 years. Every battle fought near the gate appeared in the space between the two fleets. Every ship that had been destroyed, every life that had been lost, every family that had been torn apart by the war. All of it played back from the perspective of an ancient intelligence that had watched and remembered. Admiral Kekthul saw his warriors, dying for what he had told them was honor and glory, but from the artifact's perspective, they were dying for the right to control something that was never meant to be controlled. Commander Isandra saw her people sacrificing themselves for what she had called the survival of their species. But the recording showed that the galaxy had always been big enough for everyone, if they had only looked beyond their fear. "This is not possible," Kexthul whispered, staring at the holographic display of a Vorthon soldier's final message to his family. "We fight for the survival of our empire." "Your empire spans 47 star systems," the artifact replied, its voice somehow speaking directly to his mind. "I am showing you charts to 16,000 star systems that your people could reach without this gate." Cassandra watched a recording of Rillan children asking when their parents would come home from the war. "We fight to protect our future," she said. "You fight to control a past that no longer exists," the artifact answered. "I was built by people who learned that the future belongs to those who share it, not those who hoard it." Inside the station's core, the 5 humans watched the communication happening through their scanner's display. The artifact was not just showing the fleet commanders what they had been fighting over. It was showing them what they could have been building instead. The precursors did not disappear, Daun realized. They evolved beyond the need for territory and war. And they left this here to help others do the same, Minwu added. The artifact's final message appeared in the space between both fleets, written in letters of light large enough to be seen from every ship. "This gate was never meant to be owned. It was meant to be the first step in a network that connects all peoples. I have waited 50,000 years for someone to ask the right question. You asked how to win a war. They asked how to end one." The holographic display zoomed in to show the 5 humans standing in the core chamber. Both fleet commanders could see their faces clearly, young beings from a species most of the galaxy considered primitive. "The Deathworlders," Admiral Kexthul asked in shock. "The students," Commander Isandra added. Around both fleets, ships began powering down their weapons. Captains and crews who had been preparing for the largest battle in galactic history found themselves looking at star charts that promised exploration instead of destruction. The 10-year war was ending not with victory or defeat, but with the embarrassing realization that it had never needed to happen at all. In the core chamber, Teho looked at his friends and smiled. "I think we just passed our assignment." Outside, the Nexus gate continued to glow. No longer a prize to be won, but a doorway to be shared. The artifact had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten, that the best solutions often came from asking better questions. And sometimes, those questions came from people who were too young, too stubborn, or too human to accept that a problem could not be solved. The silence between the 2 fleets was more shocking than 10 years of warfare had been. Thousands of ships hung motionless in space, their weapons powered down, their crews staring at star charts that changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The holographic recordings from the precursor artifact had faded, but the message remained clear. They had been fighting over something that was meant to be shared. Admiral Kexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the data his science officers had confirmed. 16,000 star systems, dozens of natural wormholes, territory enough for 100 empires to expand into for the next 1,000 years. "How long have we known about these passages?" he asked his navigation officer. "Sir, our deep space sensors detected some of these formations years ago, but we classified them as unstable phenomena. We never sent ships to investigate because we were too busy fighting over this one gate," Kexthul finished. His rock-like face showed an expression his crew had never seen before. Shame. On the Rillan flagship, Commander Isandra was having a similar conversation. Her species valued careful planning and risk assessment above all else. The idea that they had missed obvious opportunities because they were focused on a single objective went against everything their culture taught. "The mathematical probability that we overlooked so many viable alternatives is," her science officer began. "Is what happens when fear makes you stupid," Isandra interrupted. "We were so afraid of losing our one route between the spiral arms that we never looked for other routes." Both commanders received a communication request at the same time. The source was listed as Academy Training Vessel 77. Admiral Kexthul accepted first. His view screen showed 5 young faces he recognized from Academy records, the humans who had somehow ended a 10-year war in under an hour. "Admiral," said the one identified as Park Tae-ho, speaking in perfectly respectful Standard Galactic, "we would like to request safe passage back to the Academy." "You..." Kex Thule struggled to find words. "You stopped the largest battle in galactic history." "We asked a different question," Tae-ho replied simply. Commander Isandra joined the communication channel. Her serpentine face appeared on screen next to the Vorthon Admiral. "What question?" It was the human female Kim Da-un who answered. "Everyone was asking how to win the war. We asked why you were fighting it. The Nexus Gate is the only passage between..." Kex Thule began. "With respect, Admiral," interrupted the pilot, Choi So-young. "That is what you believed, but the precursor artifact just showed you it was never true." The communications expert, Yang Min Woo, leaned forward. "We intercepted messages from both your fleets. Your soldiers have been asking the same question for years. Why are we fighting over empty space when our families need us at home? And now they have their answer," added the engineer, Lee Jun-ho. "You were not fighting over empty space. You were fighting over a gift that was meant for everyone." Admiral Kex Thule looked at Commander Isandra. Both military leaders who had spent a decade trying to destroy each other now faced the reality that their war had been based on a misunderstanding. "The artifact," Isandra said slowly, "showed us other gates throughout the galaxy." "Showed you the network the precursors intended," Da-un corrected. "The Nexus Gate was never meant to be the only passage. It was meant to be the first one." The implication hit both commanders simultaneously. The precursors had not built a single gate to control travel. They had built a demonstration to show that such travel was possible everywhere. "Why did none of our scientists discover this?" Kex Thule asked. Jun-ho smiled. "Because they were trying to understand precursor technology by studying it carefully and following proper procedures. We just turned it on and asked it what it wanted to tell us." "That is very dangerous," Isandra pointed out. "Yes," Tae-ho agreed. "But sometimes dangerous solutions are the only ones that work." The conversation was interrupted by urgent reports from both fleets. Ships throughout both formations were receiving new communications from other precursor sites across the galaxy. The activation of the Nexus Gate artifact had awakened a network that had been dormant for 50,000 years. Ancient communication relays were coming online across dozens of star systems. Each one was broadcasting the same message: coordinates for natural wormholes, star charts showing safe passages, and an invitation to explore rather than conquer. "How many?" Isandra asked her science officer. "Preliminary scans show at least 60 active sites, Commander, and they are all showing us paths to unexplored regions of the galaxy." Admiral Kex Thule received similar reports. The galaxy had suddenly become much larger and much more connected than anyone had imagined. "So what happens now?" he asked the humans. "Now you choose," Tae-ho said. "You can keep fighting over this one gate, or you can explore a galaxy full of opportunities." Both fleet commanders looked at each other across the communication channel. They had been enemies for so long that cooperation seemed almost impossible to imagine. "My people value honor," Kex Thule said slowly. "There is no honor in continuing a war that should never have started." "My people value survival," Isandra added. "We cannot survive by fighting over scraps when abundance is available." The first joint message between the Vorthon Empire and Rillan Federation in 10 years was broadcast to both fleets an hour later. "All ships stand down. War operations are suspended pending full investigation of new territorial opportunities." But the real change happened more quietly. Across both fleets, soldiers who had been preparing to die for their cause instead began planning to live for their families. Engineers who had been designing better weapons started working on better exploration ships. Diplomats who had been writing surrender demands began drafting cooperation agreements. The humans returned to the Academy to face consequences for leaving without permission, violating military protocols, and interfering in galactic politics. They expected punishment. Instead, they found themselves standing before the Academy Council as heroes. Commander Velthari Zix addressed them in the main assembly hall, with students from every species watching. Your actions today have ended the deadliest conflict in recent galactic history. More importantly, you have demonstrated that sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one. The crystal being paused, her faceted eyes reflecting rainbows, as she considered her next words. The Academy will be restructuring its curriculum to include what we are calling alternative problem-solving approaches. We believe other species can learn from human methods. In the audience, their former classmates sat in stunned silence. The Veltari, who had proposed a 47-phase plan, looked embarrassed. The Omnari, who had suggested months of psychological warfare, were dim and quiet. The Kef, who had calculated acceptable losses in the millions, sat motionless. "How did you know it would work?" asked Silthara, the Veltari student who had called humans primitive just days before. Teho stood to answer. "We did not know. But on Earth, when faced with a problem that seems impossible, we learn to try impossible solutions. Because sometimes impossible is just another word for something no one has tried yet." 6 months later, the Academy received a message from the joint Vorthan-Rillan exploration fleet. They had discovered 7 new habitable worlds and made contact with 3 previously unknown civilizations. The Nexus Gate had become the hub of the largest peaceful expansion in galactic history. The war memorial that had been planned to commemorate the final battle was instead built to honor the peace that followed. At its center stood a statue of 5 young humans from a death world, with an inscription in every galactic language, to those who asked better questions. In their dormitory, the 5 friends sat around the same table where they had planned to end a war. Now they were planning their graduation assignments. The galaxy was bigger than ever before, and someone needed to explore it. "Where do you want to go?" Teho asked his friends. So Young looked out the window at stars that no longer marked the boundaries of warring empires, but the destinations of future adventures. "Anywhere humans have never been before?" "So, everywhere," Daun said with a smile. And in the space between stars, ancient precursor artifacts continued to awaken, broadcasting messages of connection and cooperation to civilizations that were finally ready to listen. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. It was also, for the first time in 10 years, at peace. The Galactic Defense Academy floated in space like a massive metal flower. Its silver walls caught the light from 3 different suns, making it shine against the black sky. Inside the academy, young beings from across the galaxy learned how to fight wars and keep peace between stars. Park Teho walked down the main hallway, his heavy boots making sounds on the metal floor. Other students moved away from him. They always did. He was human, and humans came from Earth, a world so dangerous that most aliens called it a death world. To them, humans were scary creatures who came from a planet that tried to kill everything. Living on it, Teho did not care what they thought. He had bigger things to worry about. In the Academy's main room, a huge screen showed a map of space. Red dots marked where the Vorthan Empire had their ships. Blue dots showed where the Rillan Federation kept their fleets. Between them, a single yellow dot marked the Nexus Gate, a space station that controlled the only safe path between the 2 main parts of the galaxy. For 10 years, both sides had been fighting over that yellow dot. 10 long years of death and destruction. "The war continues with no end in sight," said Commander Velthari Zix. The tall, crystal-like alien stood in front of the big screen, her body catching the light and throwing rainbow colors on the walls. "Both fleets are now moving toward the Nexus Gate for what may be the final battle." Students from different planets sat in groups. The Veltari students, made of living crystal like their teacher, sat together and made soft musical sounds when they talked. The Omnari floated in special gas tanks, their cloud-like bodies changing colors as they communicated through chemical signals. The Kef students moved as one group, their hive mind making them think and act together. The humans sat by themselves in the back corner. Besides Tai-Ho, there were 4 other human students. Kim Da-Yoon sat with her back straight, her dark eyes, watching everything and remembering every detail. She could remember anything she saw or heard, which made her very good at studying enemy tactics. Lee Junho played with a small device in his hands, taking it apart and putting it back together without looking. He understood how machines worked better than most aliens who had studied them for years. Choi So-young tapped her fingers on the desk in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Her reflexes were so fast that other students joked she could see the future. Yang Min-woo wrote notes in 7 different alien languages at the same time, switching between them like someone changing clothes. The Vorthan Admiral Kexthul commands over 3,000 ships, Commander Zix continued. He comes from a warrior culture that values honor above life. He will never retreat from battle. A hologram appeared above the screen, showing a large alien with thick armor and glowing red eyes. His species looked like walking rocks with arms and legs. The Rillan commander Isandra leads an equal force, Zix said. Another hologram appeared, a snake-like creature with 6 arms and scales that changed color. Her people value the survival of their group above everything else. She fights not for glory but to protect her species. Dayun raised her hand. Commander, why do they keep fighting over one space station? There must be other ways to travel between the spiral arms. Several alien students made sounds that might have been laughter. The Veltari crystals chimed like broken bells. The Omnari, clouds turned bright orange, which meant they found something funny. Foolish human question, whispered one of the KEF students. The others in their group nodded together. The Nexus Gate is the only stable wormhole passage. Without it, travel between the arms takes hundreds of years. Commander Zix raised one crystal hand for silence. The human asks a good question, even if the answer seems obvious to advanced species. The Nexus Gate was built by the precursors, 50,000 years ago. We do not understand their technology well enough to build another one. Taeho leaned forward. What if there was another way to end the war? This time, the alien students did not just laugh. They made sounds of shock and disbelief. The Veltari chimed so loudly it hurt human ears. The Omnari turned dark red, which meant anger. The KEF students all stood up at once. Impossible, said a Veltari student named Silthara. Our greatest military minds have studied this war for 10 years. There is no solution, except for one side, to defeat the other. The Deathworlders think they know better than us, added an Omnari floating in a mobile tank. Their primitive brains cannot understand complex strategy. Junho looked up from his device. Maybe our brains work differently because our world tried to kill us every day. We learned to think fast and find new solutions. Your world made you violent and stupid, said the KEF speaker. This is why you fight each other constantly. So-young's fingers stopped tapping. Her voice was quiet but clear. We also learned to work together when facing something bigger than our differences. Commander Zix studied the human students with her crystal eyes that saw in spectrums beyond normal light. Very well. Since you believe there might be another solution, I will give you all an assignment. The room became quiet, except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Tomorrow, both fleets will reach the Nexus Gate. Based on their current positions and battle plans, they will engage in the largest space battle in galactic history. The losing side will be completely destroyed. The winning side will be so damaged, they cannot control the territory they fought for. She touched a control, and the screen showed a detailed view of the Nexus Gate. The space station was enormous, bigger than most moons. Ships from both fleets already surrounded it like 2 groups of sharks circling their prey. Your assignment is this: design a strategy to end this war. You have until tomorrow morning to present your solutions. The best plan will be sent to the Academy Council for consideration. Students began talking excitedly in their groups. The Veltari made musical planning sounds. The Omnari created chemical clouds thick with complex ideas. The KEF moved together like a single organism, their shared mind working on the problem. The humans looked at each other and said nothing. After class, they walked to their dormitory in silence. The human section of the academy was smaller and simpler than the others. No crystal-growing chambers for the Veltari, no gas-mixing stations for the Omnari, no neural connection pods for the KEF. Just simple rooms with beds, desks, and windows that looked out at the stars. They gathered in Taeho's room, sitting on the floor in a circle like their ancestors might have done around a fire. They expect us to fail, Daeun said. They gave us this assignment because they want to prove humans cannot solve problems that advanced species cannot solve. Maybe that is exactly why we can solve it, Minwoo said. He spoke in perfect standard galactic, but his accent was still Korean. They have been thinking about this war the same way for 10 years. They see it as a problem of military strength and tactical superiority. Junho held up his device. He had turned it into a small holographic projector showing the Nexus Gate. What if they are asking the wrong question? What do you mean? Taeho asked. Everyone asks, how do we win this? War. Yes, but what if the real question is, why are they fighting this war? So Young stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the Academy orbited the planet below. On Earth, when two groups fight over water or land, sometimes the solution is not to help one side win. Sometimes the solution is to find more water or land. But there is only one Nexus Gate, Daeun said. That we know of. Minwoo added quietly. The room became very quiet. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, carrying the light of civilizations that had solved problems the current galaxy could not imagine. Taeho looked at his friends, the only family he had among the stars. Commander Zik said the precursors built the Nexus Gate 50,000 years ago. She also said we do not understand their technology. So? Daeun asked. So maybe we have not been asking the right questions about the precursors either. As the Academy's artificial night began, 5 human students from a death world started planning something that would change the galaxy forever. They did not know they would succeed. They only knew they had to try. Outside their window, the light from distant battles flickered like dying stars, marking the end of one age and the beginning of another.